guys, what is up? Welcome back to Deck Talk Podcast, and we got one heck of a show for you tonight. We have the honor to be able to have this guest coming on. But guys, if you don't know, I'm Colin Burnett.
That's right, Colin. And I'm Norman Lee, man. Yeah, we have a great show lined up for tonight with an awesome guest. But first, we got some business to take care of. We got to talk about our sponsor for tonight's episode. This episode is brought to you by Bruiser Baits. Baits made for fishermen by fishermen. Family owned and operated with one goal in mind: to build premium quality baits that are proven to put fish in your boat day in and day out. From soft plastics to jerk baits, crankbaits, flat out tungsten weights, apparel, and a whole lot more. Plus, if you like throwing walking topwater baits, you have got to check out their all new Dirty Dancer. Make sure to go to www.bruiserbaits.com. Don't forget, make sure to use that discount code DECKTOP10 at checkout for your instant savings. Again, that's bruiserbaits.com. And don't forget, use that discount code DECKTOP10 at checkout. Man, Colin, we have got a show lined up for you guys tonight. We have, of course, you can probably already see him in the center of your screen there. But anyway, let's get started introducing him. I've known this guy for quite some time now. He fished the first ever bass Operation Bass tournament in 1980. In 1989, he started working as part of the operations staff for Bass or Operation Bass. He was part of the operation crew for the inaugural season of the FLW Tour in 1996. In 2001, for 19 seasons, he became the FLW Tour tournament director. And his final 2 seasons before he retired in 2022, he served as tournament director of operations for Major League Fishing. The one and only Bill Taylor. What's up, man?
Thank you for coming on. Thank
Man,
you.
we appreciate you come sharing some of your time with us, Bill. Man, this is an honor and a privilege to be able to have you on tonight.
Exactly.
Well, I appreciate the kind words, Norm and Colin. But I love doing these deals, and I feel honored that you guys invited me. I really do.
Well, when Norman told me that he could get a hold of you, and it's like he said, I'm going to get a hold of him and see if he'll come on. I was like, we have got to get him on.
Amen
And
on
so,
it,
because we, with this podcast and stuff, like we like to have our guests on and be able to pick their brains on stuff and be able to talk some fishing, but also give other kind of insights uh, on different types of things. Like with you, with being the tournament director and stuff, we want to talk about that. And like when we have a pro angler coming on, we like to go through their mindsets, like what's going on through the day, what's the baits and stuff that they're doing, and how they go about getting ready for a tournament. So to be able to have you on and to be able to kind of pick your brain on some things is definitely an honor and a privilege to be able to have you on, Mr. Bill.
Yes.
So, um, but let's get started with this. How did you get introduced into bass fishing, Mr. Bill?
Well, I started out fishing as a young guy, 12, 13 years old, just the old cane pole rig, and finally went to Zebco and just had a love for the outdoors. And had a good friend, his name's Gerald Robinson, and from down, grew up next door, pretty close to where we lived there. We hooked up and started doing some fishing, and his dad had a little boat, and I started going with Gerald, and then it grew from there. And the one thing that really, really, really caught my eye was the first time I was. We only lived about 35 minutes from Lake Cumberland growing up, but I was in awe of the lake. I mean, right to this day, I appreciate the good works that God gave us in putting that water close to my home because that's my favorite place to be. I'll be
Yeah.
there again probably Saturday. And but one of my Sunday school teachers he took us camping down on Lake Cumberland when I was probably 14, and I truly fell in love with it there. So
That's awesome.
thank goodness that
Yeah.
he he was a good man, and he's gone now. But uh, I thank him in my prayers every night.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's amazing just how just something like that going on like a little camping trip. I mean, you would have never thought that it would have prospered into uh, the passion and the love of fishing that you have, and the good Lord puts you in that situation for a reason, and I thoroughly believe that. And you've done one heck of a job as a tournament director.
Well, I appreciate it.
But let's talk. So when did you get into like into tournament fishing? Because you fished some like BFLs and stuff like that
Right, right, right.
prior to
Yeah,
the tournament director with the FLW and stuff like that, right?
yeah. Oh, sure. And well, it all started kind of once I got my first copy of the Bassmasters magazine, basically. Uh, but that come out about the time I got drafted into the Army in 1970, fresh out of college. But my wife would send that magazine to me even after I went overseas and everything. And but then I got out of the service and went to work full time at United Parcel Service, and we moved to Danville, Kentucky. And right to this day, I live less than 200 yards from Harrington Lake, and I just knew then that I'd made the right move, the right town, right city, and I bought me a little old boat, a little 15 footer, had a 18 horsepower Mercury on it, and I took it from there.
Now, do you uh, so do you with being in Kentucky and stuff with Lake Cumberland, and then what the lake that's there in Danville? Do you prefer to fish like those highland reservoirs, or do you like more of like the TVA with the river and stuff like that? Do you prefer to
Oh,
have the highland?
yeah. Oh, that's a good question. As a matter of fact, that's the first time anyone's ever asked me that. And I've always done well on the Highland reservoirs, Dale Hollow, Lake Cumberland, Norris Lake. I won a big event on Bull Shows. I love Lake Martin in Alabama. I love to go to Lake Lanier because, yep, the Highland reservoirs fish a little bit differently
Mm-hmm.
than the lowlands, but there's nothing like fishing the Tennessee River system from Chickamauga and
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Gunnersville all the way through.
that's where we're at.
You lucky dog.
And I mean, Mr. Bill, we are blessed to be in the location that we are, because from my house, 25 minutes I can be on Chickamauga, 20 minutes I can be on Nickajack, and about 40 minutes I can be on Gunnersville. So
Yeah.
we
Wow.
uh, we are very blessed with the location that we are in. We can, if you want to catch big green ones, you can either go north or south. So,
Yeah.
um, but if you want to catch some nice smallies, you just go right in the middle with Nickajack.
Yeah.
So,
That is. That's a good location. I'll tell you what impresses me about those lakes there, especially Gunnersville and Chick. Um, the people there really want to take care of those ecosystems,
Yeah.
and
yeah,
they're doing a daggum good job at it too.
Yeah.
Um, it's such a unique place to be, and it's as everybody knows, there's no better catches anywhere. 12 months a year. Even you think, well, you can't fish in the wintertime. Yes, you can. Those
yeah,
lakes.
yeah.
Oh,
That
yeah, you can.
I've got a buddy, because people are saying that Chickamauga is kind of falling off the charts because you used to be, in which that on Chickamauga once or twice a week you'd see somebody catch a double digit,
Oh
and
yeah.
now it's like maybe once twice a month that you'll see a double digit, and people are like the big bass are not in here, and I've got, well, Norman and I, we have a buddy of ours that he's a guide, and he's been putting his clients on double digits. I think this year he said he's gotten over 20 double digits, and his biggest fish that he's caught was 14.6, which is the
Wow.
the third biggest bass in Tennessee. and the third biggest bass on Chickamauga.
Yeah.
Wow.
But
Well, uh, while we're talking that subject, I did an old Red Man tournament trail. The now the BFL, of course.
right,
One of the events we had there out of Dayton, one fish that weighed 7 pounds and something won the event. Also,
really,
I come in second with four fish that weighed just ounces less than the winner had. There was probably zero limits in that event. That had to have been somewhere mid 80s, and
right.
I don't exactly remember the dates, but I know it was a March date.
Yeah,
But that's
that's
how. And I also fished I want to recognize a gentleman that just passed away, Jerry Ryan. He run a circuit called the Hungry Fisherman,
right.
and he had an event up there. I munted with five fish. Now get this, it weighed 4 pounds and 11 ounces. Five
Five
12 inch
fish.
that weighed 4 pounds and 11 ounces, and I munted in that one. I think it took a 2 day, no, it was a 1 day event. I think now I can't remember,
Right.
but I munted with a extremely low catch. But that was when the milfoil really started
Yeah.
coming together down on those systems through there, and it began to pick up. And then people like Andy Morgan and that crew. I fished against Andy when he was 16 years old. And those guys just learned to catch him a lot better. But
Yeah.
the ecosystem just it just picked up to no end. Just had everything you needed: good
It,
clean water, good
yeah.
grass populations of grasseries, and just a good system. And so,
And bait galore. I mean, it
yes.
is a buffet out there.
Yeah.
And but
Now, when you were fishing the BFLs, Bill, correct me if I'm wrong. At one time, you actually held the record for the most wins in a BFL division.
Well, I did have, and thanks for mentioning that. I'm very proud of that fact. But of course, when people like David Fritz and Andy Morgan and John Wright from up in Illinois and um, Smiley from over, David Wright from over in North Carolina, and then Shaw Grigsby down in Florida, those guys come after I did. And so I fished my last event in 1997. I won that one on Lake Cherokee. I dabbled just a little bit with the old, I'll call it, it's now the Toyota series. At that
Yeah.
time, it was uh, uh,
Was the coast
the
before the
Everstart
coast? Yeah.
series.
Yeah. I
And
rode it.
then I guess in 2002, I had already been working full time for a couple of years and was now the tournament director. And I wasn't able to fish anymore after that because, just in my position, it just
Yeah. The
wasn't
conflict of
feasible.
right,
interest.
But
yeah.
yeah, I was lucky. I still have the 14 wins that I had in '97. So I've been passed by several people now.
So Norman talked a little bit about the Operation Bass.
Oh yeah.
Um, and can you explain like what Operation Bass was?
Sure.
So for because right now we've got little over 900 people watching, and I imagine there's a few people on here that may not know what
Oh
Operation Bass.
yes, absolutely. Okay, a gentleman by the name of Mike Whitaker, an old football coach from up in Illinois. I met him at a BASS tournament down in Florida on Okeechobee. And he talked and we talked, and he said, Bill, he said, I want to run something by you. He said, uh, I want to start a tournament trail that offers an opportunity to anglers, weekend anglers, basically, that held jobs, wasn't able to either afford to travel, afford to fish the major events. And at that time in 1978, uh, there was very few circuits out there. There was some state circuits, but it was nothing on a national level. And he said, would that be something you're interested in? And I said, absolutely. And so Mike and I talked, and he asked her what about the entry fees and all the little pertinent things that had to do with an event. And of course, I was as green with the tournament aspect of it. I'd fished a lot of local tournaments by that time, but I didn't know anything about organization of them or what it took to put one on. But I later found out he put some good events on. This gentleman should be in the Hall of Fame, Mike Whitaker. He held the company from 1978 or 9. I can't remember exact year it was. I believe he started it in the 79, but he sold the company in 1996 and to a group, and then he's been out of it. But he's a deserving. He had the insight that so many people, and he run a great organization. Matter of fact, he hired Charlie Evans and Kathy Fennell, and they worked under his tutelage, and they brought that company along. So the first name of it was Operation Bass. But then that later changed when Irwin Jacobs bought it, and they renamed it to FLW in honor of Forrest L. Wood.
Now, and speaking of the FLW, like how did you get started to started working with the FLW?
Well, that's another good question. Another one that I'm very proud I decided that, hey, that might be something I want to do. It was in 18, I'm sorry. It was in 1988. Charlie Evans and I had just fished a tournament on Lake Cumberland. And I said, "What are you going to do this next week?" And he said, "Well, I'm going to got to hire a couple of staff people to help with some of our events." By then they had, I forget how many divisions, 15, so I don't remember exactly, but they had an opening for a part-time tournament assistant, and that involved just carrying and taking the equipment to every event and working so many in each division, and my daughter was getting ready to start at the University of Kentucky. And I said, I may be interested in that. So I went home and discussed it with my wife, Barbara, and we said, hey, that's going to fit right in. Plus,
Mm-hmm.
he was offering to give me a usage of a company vehicle and a company boat. And I said, I'm
Nice.
in. And
Sold.
oh, yeah. So, long story short, in 1995, I went to Charlie and Kathy and said, "Look, I'm going to have to resign. I want to do some more fishing. I hadn't been doing nearly the amount of events I wanted to fish. I worked the Michigan division, where, by the way, I met some of the greatest people I ever know in my life to this day. The Hoosier division in Indiana. You talk about some guys that can fish. Those guys can fish. And then I helped run the mountain division along with those tournament directors. And then in 2000, I retired from UPS. But before that, in 1996, Charlie come to me, and the reason he wouldn't allow me to quit the BFL side of it, he wanted me to go with him to the newly named FLW Tour, and the rest is history. Because thank God again that I was put in that position, because it was a dream come true. And to work with people like Kathy Fennell, Dave Washburn, who basically run the operations part of the Major League Fishing now, unbelievable. Two of the finest people I've ever known in my life. And being just able to meet people like Larry Nixon and Kevin Van Dam, and see the pros like Dakota Eber come on scene, and Jacob Wheeler, who's got to be now, since Kevin left, uh,
The
the
best.
best in the world,
Yeah.
and it's just been a dream come true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
And
for you, I mean, being on stage, I mean, it must be very special for you to, like you just named Jacob Wheeler. I mean, Jacob Wheeler started with the FLW tour, and for you to personally see him then, as a rookie, fishing his first tour, season, and to see where he is today. I mean,
Oh yeah.
and you always use the word arguably, but now that Kevin's retired, active, as an active angler, the best in the world right now. I mean, to see
Well,
where they started and where they are now must be special for you to
oh, it's very
really be
special.
part of that process too.
Yeah. Well, so many people don't understand. uh, my particular position, and the reason I say it that way is I basically not only run the event, but I recruited anglers. Uh, Time to time, I had to work hard to fill the fields, whether it was at the BFL level, we help those guys, or whether it was the now Toyota Series, helping. By the way, Mark McWaugh is phenomenal with the Toyota Series with Major League Fishing. There's not a better program out there, and I'm proud to say that I had a big part to do with setting that up, along with Kathy and Dave. But to get on the telephone with a young angler that says, "Hey, Mr. Bill, I want to fish the FLW Tour next year. What do I need to do?" And to console them and to give them good information of what they needed to do and how tough it would be to make a living doing it. And I saw so many succeed and just have done so great. And Jacob, one of them, but Michael Neal, Andy Morgan,
Yeah.
uh, just
Those,
I'll leave too many out, so I'm not going to mention any more names. But I
right.
tell
The
you,
list
it's
just
it's
goes
quite
on
an
and on.
honor
I mean, forever.
to
Well,
watch those guys grow in this sport.
and one thing that I really enjoy about the fishing community, and which Norman and I mean, we're we're blessed to be able to get out and be able to go to different events and stuff and be able to talk and interview different anglers and stuff. But just how uh, everybody in the fishing community wants. We've never had anybody that's been really rude to us or anything like that. They've all been very to where we can go and interact with them. Even with Jacob Wheeler, we see Jacob Wheeler on Chickamauga all the time, and if you I've had him come up onto a point to where I was fishing, and he just asked, "Hey, can I fish right here next to you?" And then talk to him at the docks and stuff like that and the ramps. But even I mean, we it is the fishing community is almost like a family
Oh,
to
there's no doubt.
where uh, you can people they think of like professional athletes and stuff like that to where like in football, baseball, basketball, they're not accessible, but in the fishing, no matter if it's MLF or bass, they, especially like at Red Crest or the Classic, the anglers are so accessible for just your general population to be able to go and talk to them. And that's one thing that I really like about the fishing community
Yeah.
is,
Oh yeah, and mentioned the Red Crest there. I'm gonna go down to Birmingham for that event just to see people. I mean, I picked up the phone the other day and called Jimmy Houston. We talked for 40 minutes, and and that's true throughout that sport.
yeah.
Even George Cochran and Larry Nixon. I could text Larry right here in 5 minutes and say, Larry, I need you to be on this podcast here. Can you now sit still for 5 minutes? And he'd say, sure, Bill, whatever you need. And
Yeah.
um, sometimes I get pretty emotional about it. That's the reason I worked till I was 74 years old. I loved what I did.
Right.
People like, I'd go to ICAST, and of course I'd see Norman, or I'd go to ICAST and I'd be in a meeting with whomever, or Lawrence, or whomever, Ranger Boat Company, Phoenix Boats, and all that, and everyone just always treated me with so much respect. For what reason I don't really know, but I loved it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
you had mentioned Larry Nixon, and that kind of brings back a little bit of a memory. Actually, a pretty recent memory though. Because Larry was or is competing. Still to this day, and
Yeah,
he was fishing at the highest level. He won two, I think, wasn't it two back to back? Tour events on was it the St. John's, I think. I can't remember, but anyway, just recently. I mean, it goes back probably about 7 years, but that's kind of recent.
Oh yeah, that is recent.
But yeah, two back to back.
Yeah.
And I mean, at where he was then, I mean, competing against 20 somethings, and he goes on and basically kicks all the young kids' butts, and he's a seasoned veteran,
Oh
still,
yeah.
still really was kicking it on the FLW tour.
Oh yeah.
So
I haven't. I met Larry a long time ago, and didn't really know him until he started fishing the FLW Tour. And I'll tell you, if I could get on the water with someone uh, that's a professional angler, and as long as I've known Larry, I've never been in the boat with him. I wouldn't care to go fishing with him just one time because he's that type of angler. I mean,
Yeah,
he's the same every day. But now I want to make sure everybody out there understands the bulk of all the pro anglers are really, really
yeah,
fine people.
they are. And
oh yeah,
that's where I was trying to go with it. Is it's not you could see like in different sports, it's all about me,
Yes,
and
yes.
and and it's crazy that most of the people that are like that play a team event to where it's not just you. You've got in basketball, you got four other people on the court. You got 11 people on the field playing football. You got nine on the baseball field.
yeah,
But then fishing, it is about you and what you do. And the guys are not like that. I mean, there, I say there is some out there that is like that, but it is very few and far between. Most
yeah.
of the guys is
I agree.
very
And
gentlemanly about it, and if you and they'll sit there and talk fishing with you all day long.
Oh yeah.
we've talked about it in the past, yeah, between me and Colin, and there's not another sport out there like bass fishing. I mean, where the fans of the sport, could go to a tournament and have up close and personal access to the players,
Yeah, that's true.
and the players basically will spend hours talking to fans just in general, where that doesn't happen in other professional sporting events.
No,
Bass
but
fishing's really the
someday,
only one.
someday, hopefully there'll be a way that these so-called top of line of the pros, and I'm talking about the guys at the MLF Bass Pro Tour and the Bassmaster Elites, which is a great organization, by the way, and where they could make, the $1 million contracts, and some of them do right now, but for the most part, it's money wise, it doesn't compare.
Right.
And with the TV coverage out there, and with on the water live and all the technology out there to be out there, following those pros, they're getting a lot of viewers now and a lot more every day. And
Yeah.
thanks to people like you guys for promoting the sport because that's what it needs. And
Well,
I think
that's
that's the goal of Major League Fishing. I know Boyd is really, really wants to develop a program that takes it to three times what it is right now as far as the payoffs. And you talk to a pro, and the only complaint they ever have is the payouts, and based upon
yeah.
that, and a lot of them make good money besides what they earn, I'll tell you. But then at the bottom of the line there, those guys are struggling a little bit just because of lack of money out there.
Yeah, and
Right.
with the
So,
day of social media today, I mean, you see a lot of even the top name pros like Jacob Wheeler. They pretty much, you know, do their YouTube channel,
yeah,
and they
yeah,
do that to supplement a lot of their
well,
expenses. That
yeah,
because
oh yeah,
it's an expensive it's an expensive sport to do what they do each year. To
it is,
I mean,
it is.
between the entry fees, the travel expenses, and fans of the sport and people that hasn't never done it don't realize that they think they get everything paid for by their sponsors. A lot of these anglers have to pay a lot of their expenses on their own. They don't,
They
so
do.
they rely on cashing a check. They have to cash checks from time to time to be able to help. offset their expenses,
Oh
and
yeah.
and,
Oh
and they
yeah.
don't get paid to fish like a lot of people might think.
Yeah.
You know, they have to pay a lot of their own way in a lot of cases. And
Mhm.
people see all the sponsors, and they basically think they're pretty much their career is paid for, but nah. And that's why a lot of in my opinion, a lot of them's doing the YouTube channels uh, to help make some money off that, to help with some of their expenses they have, because
Yeah.
it is an expensive game to play.
It
Yeah.
is. Yeah.
I enjoy watching those YouTube
Oh yeah, me and
podcasts.
Colin too. We
There's a
love it.
couple out there that I refuse to listen to and watch. I'm not going to call any names, but
Yeah.
for the most part, everyone and unfortunately, I hadn't been able to watch them until I retired. I was constantly working,
Right.
and but now that I'm retired, give me something to do, and I
Yeah.
really enjoy it. I mean, there's some that's better than others, but when you
Yeah.
talk fishing, I like to watch the bluegill and the catches and the crappie, and
Crappie. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, you know what?
I
One of the
love
things.
eating them too.
Oh my good, hey, that's what we're going to have for dinner tonight. I done got them thawed out, laid out. Got
Yeah.
the old so-called grease in the pans right now, ready to start cooking here in a few
That's
I
what
was,
minutes.
I'm.
I was gonna
What
say,
time's
speaking about
dinner?
I wish we were closer. We'd sure bring you over.
yeah, I was gonna say, before we get off the YouTube channel, you're speaking about the YouTube though, like for example, Jacob Wheeler's YouTube channel, and Scott Martin does a heck of a job
Oh
also
yeah,
on his channel, but it kind of it brings you to see a lot of the behind the scenes of
absolutely.
what happens
Yeah.
when they're on the road. They do a travel blog,
Yes.
and a lot of people don't see really what these professional anglers or professional athletes, what happens behind the scenes before the tournament actually starts, and that's what I think is pretty cool. Like Jacob does a heck of a job on his channel. Dustin Carnell DC on his channel, showing showing all the house footage, and showing how much fun they have together, but then when they hit the water it becomes serious.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
And a lot of
business.
people don't see what the behind the scenes
I agree.
goes on with these guys, but the YouTube channels kind of brings a little bit of a light to the fans of fishing, what these guys actually do behind the scenes, and
Sure.
before they hit the
I
lakes.
especially, I'm going to give Scott Martin and his crew, Scott Canterbury and
Yeah,
Matt
Scott
Airy.
Canterbury, Matt
I
Airy.
really enjoy watching theirs. And
Oh
then
yeah.
DC Connell, wow, he's I don't him and Mr. Wheeler. I tell you about it. That's two peas in a pod right there.
Oh man, I
Yeah,
tell you what, yeah.
and then Mark Daniels Jr. tagging along with
Yeah.
them,
Yeah,
and we had Adrian Avina on the podcast not too long ago, and we asked what was the funniest thing that ever happened in the house at a tournament, and he told us that he could not say what happened on this podcast because it was not clean. So, but with to kind of go back when you said that you do like the recruiting and stuff for the tournament trails,
yeah.
um, can you give like because we have like some younger like high school anglers and stuff. Can you give like some tips or what you were looking at when you were trying to recruit some anglers? What were you looking for to be able to say yes, they would be a good fit for this tournament trail, or no, they will not? Can you give some advice
Well,
on that?
well, you know, first off, let me make sure everybody understands that whenever the Toyota guys, the Toyota series that worked their way up the FLW Tour, we would take X number of anglers from each division, and so with that being said, then I would give those guys a call and I explained to them the process and how hard it could possibly be, or how fun it would be, or how hard it would be out there to try to do it. And I would make sure that they knew the cost of doing business out there,
Right,
and I'd tell them what they needed to do to try to get sponsors and that sort of thing. So that when I said recruiting, that's kind of what I was talking about. And
right,
then when those guys would work their way up to the FLW Tour, then I would go down the line and first off, I would talk to everybody that was coming back or had qualified on the FLW Tour. I would call each and every one of them. every one of them, I would call them and make sure that they knew they were welcome back, invited back, and ask them if they were coming back. And that way I knew how many people I would need to really work with to try to encourage to come on the next ladder up and enter the FLW Tour. I really enjoyed doing that, and that kept me uh, basically, one on one with those anglers when they did come in. And I've watched some good. You mentioned Adrian Avena. I remember calling Matt Becker and telling him that one of these days he's going to be one of the best out there. And George, he's come to it. I remember talking to Michael Neal's dad, fine man that ever was, when Michael was 16, 17 years old. I watched Wesley Strader come from a little uh, uh, little country boy to make a great living, a great pro angler, and
Yeah.
those things really mean a lot to me. And so I would encourage them. I always tried to encourage them and tell them, but I never ever misled them to believe that it was automatic to go out there and make a great living.
Yeah.
I would tell them what they needed to do to do it. They had to subsidize their fishing with a good sponsorship. I encourage them to go to the ICAST if possible. I encourage them to always go to the Bassmaster Classic, the old Forest Wood Cup, now the Major League Fishing Red Crest. I still, to this minute, I've got a little nephew that just signed with Carson Newman University, and he's
Awesome.
going to be a stud. He already is a stud. He's going to be a star, and he's like his uncle Bill, that he's more interested in fishing than he is going to the classic or going to the Red Crest. But now he's going to try to go down and at least go for a couple of days and do
That's
that.
awesome.
Yeah.
So I'll just try to encourage them, but not lie to them or tell them something that's not there.
Yeah. And speaking of the Red Crest, it's actually right around the corner.
Right
What
around
is
the
it,
corner
next weekend?
next week. Yeah,
Yep, at Lay Lake, guys. So if
right.
you're in Birmingham area, and Norman and I, Mr. Bill, are going to try to make that track down there. It's just what, 2.5, 3 hours away
Yeah.
from
Well,
us.
I hope
So
you do. I'll let you buy my dinner.
we definitely will. Definitely will.
Definitely the
No, I would. I've got a tournament the following Sunday on Lake Cumberland. It's a USA Bassing. It's a little circuit I fish, and I'm going to leave Saturday afternoon to drive back to Kentucky to fish that one. But yeah, that's a good point. I want to come. If nothing else, I just like to sit and talk and about fishing. If I don't know who you are, I'll sure make sure I act like I do. So if you see me, say hello.
Right, right.
I'm like
Now,
I'm like Norman, Colin. I haven't met but one person I didn't like, and I don't like him to this day.
sorry,
So I
Norman.
love everybody else.
so, now, how has tournament fishing changed
Oh, good
uh,
question.
for from the time that you started tournament fishing to present day?
Well, as everybody knows, it's a lot of changes, but I think the biggest change, of course, has just been the steady growth and improvement of the equipment.
Yeah,
I can remember when if you towed a boat, your vehicle of choice was just a car or a station wagon, and
yeah,
then they went to pickup trucks, and then through the '80s, everybody drove a van. I went through the new uh, technique of flipping. Uh, some anglers cussed it, some of them loved it, and I loved it, and I learned it, and I ran with it. I went through the Alabama rig situation. Uh, and then we got up to where we had the upgrades in the electronics and Lowrance and Garmin and even Humminbird, and all three of them were side by side, making it grow and get bigger and easier to use and everything. And we moved right on up, and now we got the forward facing sonar, and I love it. I probably get beat up by saying it to some of the co-anglers that fish at the BFL and some of the other events. But it's the best tool ever been put out there. And
on
of course, you got to go back and whenever they come along with the fluorocarbon lines, made a big difference. And
Right.
everybody says, well, the fishing better now than it was. Well, I think our tools are much better. So naturally, we're
Exactly.
going to catch more fish. And we would catch even more if they'd let these pros use the Alabama rig and
Yeah.
just things like that. But then, yeah, I could see the probably the best change that I've seen is the conservation of the species.
Right.
Uh, there's not an angler out there that wants to harm that bass. I know the Bass Pro Tour guys is catch, release, immediate. I really respect those guys with Gary Klein and Boyd. That's been huge, but that's not feasible at my in Norman and your tournament fishing. It's just too hard and too expensive to maintain and
Yeah.
continue to do it. And I watched the Bassmasters at Lake Fork. They did a heck of a job down there with that.
They
And
did.
uh, then there's been other little organizations that's went through. I think Fishermen of Men or someone tried a few of those events. So I think that's good. But I would say I love the conservation attitudes of and we need to teach those high schoolers a little better etiquette out on the water. And I talk to these coaches and these captains, and they're doing much better. When they first come out, I said, "Oh my goodness!" I was fishing one day on Kentucky Lake by myself, out on a ledge, but I was bluegill and red ear fishing, and the boat pulls right up and says, "I see you're not bass fishing. We're going to pull in here and fish." And I said, "Not right here, you're not." And I explained to them, just because I'm not bass fishing doesn't mean that you can come in and intrude on me
Yeah.
fishing. But I said, "But I'm
Right.
gonna tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to explain it to you, and I want you to respect everybody. But I'm going to go ahead and move so you can fish this. But I want you to know that's not the way to do it."
Mm-mm.
And that coach called me for weeks after that, apologizing. And I think that sport's growed. And then the college anglers, my goodness, some of these kids are coming out of there. Woo!
And
I mean,
Yeah.
they
and
study them. I
and
can't
that's
name them.
I was gonna say
that's the craziest.
You're talking about Lake Fork, where the last Bassmaster tournament go. Talking about younger anglers. How about that Trey McKinney? 19 years old
Yeah, I know it.
and
Over
youngest
120
ever to
pounds.
win.
I
I
know it.
mean,
Unbelievable.
But I mean, even not. I mean, not even just with bass. I mean, even with the FL. I mean, the MLF.
Sure.
The these college kids, once they get out of college and they're making that step, they are probably more prepared
yeah,
to
Oh,
be
they
able
are.
to fish professional
That's right.
than anybody within the last, even I'd say 5 to 10 years. That
Oh,
I mean,
just so
it's
much. Yeah, what usually took anglers like Wesley Strader, for instance, he was 17, 16, 17 years old. He didn't start shining till he hit 30.
yeah,
yeah,
Now they come out of there at 19 or 20 years old, and I mean, uh,
hammers.
yeah, they're hammers. And you can look at the top 10 standings at the end of an event, and half of them are mid 20s or less.
Yeah,
yeah,
But that's good. That's good. And I know a lot of the pros are struggling a little bit with that, but and in a way I do as well. I can't compete nearly as well. I had a tournament this past weekend that finished fourth in, and the guys that won is close friends of mine, Big John DeVere and Richard Bowling, and they don't use the units at all. John's got three on his and never turns them on, and they still win it. So
yeah.
it's still, but then guys in third place, they's out there scouting around at them, and of course my partner and I, we saw everyone that we caught by.
mm,
So
Yeah.
it's a tool that can. It's there's just so many different ways you can catch fish, and
That is very true. Because
yeah,
Norman and I, we have people ask us all the time, Mister Bill, like, what is our opinion on the forward facing sonar? And I I've got a quick answer for it.
yeah.
And I just like what you're saying is it's a tool. People that have it on the boat love it. People that don't have it on the boat does not like it. I said if you look back to when we got the side imaging to be able to
Oh
have
yeah,
side imaging, people hated it. People
I know
thought
it.
that was cheating. And
Yeah,
now it comes standard on any depth finder. You're going to have the side imaging. And I
Yeah.
was like, just look at how times have changed to where we don't even bat an eye at side imaging anymore.
Yeah.
Well, I tell you, I use my side imaging and down scope or down imaging constantly, and
Constant.
I've got used to finding those on Kentucky Lake, and I learned that from Troy Hollowell and his brother out there. They taught me how to use that. And again, I'm 76 years old. If I can learn to do it, anyone can.
Yeah.
If you've got the desire to learn it, learn it.
Yeah.
I know it's expensive. I looked at the prices may go down a little bit here in the future, but don't badmouth those that use it and love it. Either hey, I said this. Someone was crying the other day on a podcast about well, they told us I'm getting fired or whatever it was. I can't remember what he's saying. That you
Yeah,
got fired
I
from
know whose
sponsor.
podcast you were, and
Yeah,
he's just. I mean, of course, we're not going to mention any names, but
no,
man, come on, dude.
come
I
on. If
mean,
you don't like
yeah,
it, leave it.
Yep.
it's like almost every podcast for the last 3 months now, he puts something about forward facing sonar that's
Yeah,
negative,
yeah.
as far as on the pro tour. And
No,
come
I
on, man,
know
just leave it alone.
it. I
Yeah.
know it. Come on, let's
But I
just go
think
fishing. I like it.
that's it.
You know what my favorite thing about Andy Morgan is? He's got three questions. What time we taking off, Bill? What's the size limit? And what time do I be in? And he goes fishing.
And I mean that sounds just like him.
It is.
That sounds exactly like him. Um, I do. Uh, I want to ask you, with being a tournament director and stuff, what was the hardest decision that you had to make with being a tournament director? Because you got so many different things that with an angler we're just focused on fishing, catching fish. With being a tournament director, you have so much to think about and look at, as in weather. I mean, how is it safe for our boaters to be able to go out? And which I know they're more about safety now than they were
Oh yeah,
even 20 years ago.
yeah.
Um, so what was like the hardest decision that you had to make was if somebody went out of bounds um, or that wasn't a fair or that wasn't a legal catch or something like that.
Yeah. Well, first off, the hardest decision you've got as a tournament official is making sure it's safe for takeoff. Okay. That that's the hardest decision. And luckily on my watch, there were times that you know we may have went too early, but uh, I really watched it as close as I could, and that was
Right.
important, very important. But when it comes to a rules violation, 90% of all rule violations are accidental. You
Right.
got out the off limits area, or you mistakenly went into an area that was posted as no fishing and a game reserve, or accidentally that way. But just uh, disqualifying someone for costing them the win for something like having a six fish in your live well when you bring them to scales. Of course, now we've done away with that rule at Major League Fishing some time ago, but those rules like that, when it required a disqualification, um, and you lost that weight and you lost that money and you lost those
Yeah.
points because I know from just fishing local tournaments how tough it is just to miss a money cut on the way
Right.
home, explaining to your wife, well, I lost two fish that cost me. And then they say, I don't want to hear that.
Mm,
But that's hard. And I
yeah.
feel for those guys because I know how important a lost fish or whatever. But to disqualify somebody, or the worst part, I guess you might say, is when someone violates a rule that requires a really severe penalty, maybe a suspension,
Right.
not allow them to come back for a few months or a few events or anything like that. Because It affects their family. Just like if you were a supervisor at your job and had to fire someone, it's just basically the same deal. It's tough.
Yeah.
But the one thing that I was proud of as a tournament director was the fact that I tried to make sure that I looked into every so-called and possible rules violation. Now, of course, the polygraph test was a big aid at the pro level, and when it's a he said, she said, and a polygraph would be the ruling factor on that.
Right.
Uh, but for the most part, pro anglers are honest. Uh, I hate to even use the word cheating, and I refuse to use it in most cases because there's so little of a so-called cheaters out
Right.
there.
Most of it's an honest mistake.
Yeah,
If
that's
something was
exactly
to
right.
happen on that aspect, it was an
Yeah.
honest mistake.
And when it's an honest mistake, and we've adjusted, and I say we, when I was with Major League Fishing, Kathy Fennell at that time, or Charlie Evans, and her and Dave Washburn now, and I'm sure Boyd is involved in some of those. I don't know that, but they just try to be consistent. If Norman run a no wake zone or something like that, and how did you treat his penalty versus when Bill Taylor did the same thing? To
Right.
be fair, to be equal about it, be consistent,
Yeah.
um, and that's it.
Now, when y'all are trying to pick out a venue to hold a tournament, what all goes into deciding where to go? Because I know, and or Norman and I know, like even like when they come to Chickamauga and go to Dayton, I mean that is a big deal for that city, the county, and stuff like that because that's bringing in revenue for that county, let alone being able to, uh, even with the tournament, I mean, it's a big deal. So, how do
Yeah.
you pick out, like, all right, this year we want to go to Gunnersville, Okeechobee, or
Yeah.
Toledo, or Fork, or whatever? How do y'all decide on that?
Well, first off, that system's changed a little bit over the past 5 or 6 or even 10 years. I was involved in the scheduling of the FLW Tour events, along with then Kathy Fennell would approve it, and then we would have a salesperson or a that would go out and talk to host communities and discuss all that. But first off, we looked for places with all the venues that wanted us there and had the infrastructure to have a big time event. Good boat launching, good boat trailer parking, uh, a safe area to go to, plenty of housing, great places to eat at. Uh, those things is the first thing. And everybody, I've got emails and text messages from people. Oh, why don't you come to Lake Holston, or why don't you come to um, whatever lake? And they don't realize that with 2,000 acres, it's okay for a little local tournament or something like that. But to
Right.
put a major event out there, the anglers pay and spend a lot of money, and they want a place that they can go and really catch fish. And then we looked at going, making sure we had a diverse schedule. And of course, I was involved in that heavily. I wanted to have maybe a couple of lakes that provided total shallow water fishing. I wanted to hit a lake on the Tennessee River, for instance, or I wanted to go to a big fish factory and tried to be diverse. And then I remember taking the very first major event of Champlain in 2001, and that became a normal thing to go to the big water up there at Champlain and Thousand Island area there and St. Clair and all those. So I learned in 1989 what kind of fishery the Lake Erie and the St. Clair. So we looked at those in that matter. Where can you
Now,
go? What's the best times to go there? Now that
Yeah.
was a thing too that people at first, now there's a lot more tournaments in January and February than there ever was. I can remember
Yeah.
when at the old Operation Bass in the BFL, they never opened up until 1st of March. Now, some of their best events are January and February. Of course,
Yeah.
now we've got better cold weather gear and all that, so
Yeah.
you
Right.
can get by with that, but you still
Now,
have to watch it.
is there a different type of different is it different stuff that goes into picking a venue for a regular season tour event versus like picking a venue for the Red Crest, being that the Red Crest might have a lot more fans outside the area
Yeah.
of where that actual event's going to be held coming in to watch,
Yeah.
being that
Well,
it's
yeah,
basically in an
that's
arena.
another good question, Norman. We always at FLW had our Forest Wood Cup in August. And as you well know, that's a pretty tough time to fish anywhere in the country.
Exactly.
And
Yep.
you had to look at that really, really hard to see what kind of conservation issues you may have, what kind of crowds you could draw that time of the year. Is there a NASCAR race going on during that week? Is there a Kentucky Derby going on in Kentucky? Yeah, those sort of things. We had to look at all that. I'll tell you,
Right.
we learned real quick you don't go to Okeechobee to draw a crowd and do it on Super Bowl day. And we did that. I did, but I learned pretty quickly.
Right.
Uh, we went to Beaver Lake consistently, and it generated a lot of dollars for a lot of people and taught a lot of people how to really fish a deep water, clear water, tough fishery in Beaver Lake. And I think that's the reason when a lot of the FLW Tour pros move over to Bassmasters, I think that's the reason they shined over there real quick when they moved over. People like Clark Winlet and Andy Morgan went over there and did that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Uh, but for the most part, we tried to get the scheduling done. And believe it or not, I called, I'm going to use his name at Bassmasters. I would call Mike Malone or Trip, bless his heart, one of the finest young men that ever lived,
Yep.
Trip Weldon. Uh, and I would say I never wanted to schedule on and about the Classic. And I would try to get their dates, if at all possible, to schedule around them. And then when we would look at openers, we wanted to go to places like Okeechobee or Rayburn or someplace where you could have a high percentage of have decent weather. So everybody used to say, "Well, why did you open up at Okeechobee?" Well, first of all, that's where people wanted to go.
Yep.
To field the fields with the Toyotas and all that, and the field the fields with the FLW Tour early on, you had to do that. You had to get those guys who were down there to fishing as co-anglers and things like that that come down from Canada and Michigan and Wisconsin down there for the winter. So that was a big piece of the puzzle, believe it or not. And then there was a host fee, you know. That helped with the operational part of it. That helped with the public relations issues that you could have and getting, the right media ads and all that. And a lot of our hosts, once we got there, my first thing I would tell them, we're going to leave it better than we found it. And we want to be invited back after we leave. And 9 out of the 10 times that come true. We made sure
Right.
they were happy. And that was a big part of my job.
Yeah.
And then in the last 5 years, probably that was a little less of my job, but I was involved in it heavily,
So
12 months a year.
so would y'all? How close would y'all work with like the wildlife, like the how here in Tennessee TWRA and stuff like that? Would
Yeah,
y'all work closely with them, especially with?
absolutely. And I think that's a great question, Colin. Give him an A on that one, Norm. Yes, did we work with them? I would call them to get the regulations that I needed to make sure the creel sizes and the size limits, and Could they help us with release? Could they send a boat there to make sure that everyone's aware that we want a safe takeoff? Not that they were there to punish people or give tickets. I would encourage them to check fishing license of our pros because I wanted to make sure I had a good relationship with the conservation
Right.
departments. Uh, I'll tell you, one of the finest conservation areas that I worked with, and I'm going to say there's a tie between Pennsylvania and South Carolina. Those guys really, really love to bring events in. They could do research there. They wanted to make sure that we got what we needed from them. They were willing to help with fish release. And then the guys around Hot Springs, Arkansas, they were there regardless, whether it was Lake Ouachita or Hamilton or wherever.
Yep.
Those guys are still the top three in my book.
Right.
So, well, yes, we worked diligent with them.
Now, we got a question from Nick on here that asks, why is it that we don't see big tournaments going out to California to fish like the Delta?
Well, that's another good question. And I was asked that hundreds of times, maybe more. And it involved cost more than anything. You know, you could get an angler to drive from North Carolina to Sam Rayburn on Texas, but you couldn't get a North Carolina to go all the way out and fish the Delta or Clear Lake. The numbers would fall drastically. And
Right.
I'm going to say it like it is. As everybody claims, it's all about money. Well, sure it is. You
Yeah.
know, the cost factor for the
Well, it's a
anglers.
business.
Yes, the cost factor of the anglers as well as the organizations. It's a hard drag. I think Bassmaster found that out too. I mean, they can't go out there either the same way. It just costs their pros so much money and their
Right.
staff.
I don't
Unfortunately, because
see.
they got some of the best fishing in California and the whole
Yeah.
United States.
Yeah. I don't see how uh, Jeff Gutcherson does it from way up north in Canada and have he. I think they said that, or I heard where it's like 26, 27 hours for him to drive from his house to Okeechobee.
Yeah. Well, and you know, though, that's another point of view. So many of those pros have moved into closer to those venue locations, whether
Right.
it's moving to Texas or Alabama, and that's smart on their part. That's good business on their part. Now, so many of the pros, they meet people out there that make good friends with them. That's the reason you guys discussed the pros were open to talking to their fans and you know, just being a part of the event. The fans they're important, but they'd meet people and they'd invite them when they come back. They'd put them up in their houses or their property someplace, and so that helps. And people uh, get on the road and they'll pack their bags. I know most of them will pack 3 or 4 or 5 events and stay on the road, you know.
Right.
And that's the reason we tried our best to schedule around holidays like Easter and holidays like that where they could be with their families, and tried to schedule to where their travel would be unique to where they could maybe go from FLW Tour to the Toyota Series and not any extra expense much, you know, just
Right.
to be
Yeah.
close by.
Now it's almost an hour and 5 minutes. I've got one more question, and then Norman's going to ask our final question.
Okay.
And then because we don't want to hold you too long, and then hopefully we'll see you if we make it down to Red Crest. But my final question for you is, how important was it while you was fishing tournament wise and then with the director to be able to have the support from your family and your wife to be able to do that as long as you done it?
Well, as the old boy says, fishing has been good to me. And my family supported 100%. They encouraged me to go. My wife is just unbelievable. She told me, "No, Bill, fish every day you want to go. You go fish. Get out of here. Go fishing. But I put my daughter through 7 years and with a degree in pharmacy through the University of Kentucky out of my billfold. I didn't have to borrow any money. And my son works for a utility company and helps take care of our farm up in northern Kentucky. And they've encouraged me from day one to take that job in 1989. They encouraged me when we moved and had kept her home here in Danville. We moved to Benton out there. It was a big move for us when I went full time in 2000. But my brothers and sisters, they all understand if I couldn't make a get together with a family there. But the most important part, though, is the people that I met out there that supported me to this venue. It's just unbelievable
Yeah,
that the love I found out there in this fishing organization.
Yeah.
yeah. And that's one thing that I try to ask everybody that we have come on is, I mean, because if they didn't have any kind of support,
Definitely,
then they could not make it as far as what they done. And
definitely.
everybody, then you can see that question really it kind of like we asked Iconelli that, and Iconelli it kind of set him back because I don't know if people's really ever asked him like how important is it, and I mean he just flat out told us, he said if it wasn't for my family, then I would not be fishing right now.
Yeah.
And
Well,
so
I'll tell you, my wife told me yesterday. I said, "Well, maybe I don't need to go to the Red Crest," and she said, "Bill, you are going, and you're going to go down and talk to your friends and family down there and have a big time." So I've had that support for almost 60 years of our marriage. So
that's
that means a
awesome.
lot.
Yeah,
That's awesome, man.
that does. Well, Norman, let's ask our famous last question that we
Yes.
ask everybody, brother.
Yeah. And first, Bill, it's been an honor and pleasure, man. Great talking to you. Great seeing you again. And look forward to the next time we get a chance to get together and talk to you in person. And hopefully, maybe that might be in another week or so down there at the Red Crest. But um, if you were to have one person that you could fish with for the day, and this person could be passed on or still with us, who would that person be, and why would you want to fish with them for the day?
Well, I'm going to have to say Larry Nixon. I've never been in the boat with him. I love him like a brother,
Hmm.
and I think that he cares for me as well. And one of these days, I told him we got to go fishing, so I'm going to put him at the top of my list. But I've been with a lot of pros, Norman. I mean, I've been with several, and they're all great. They all tried to make sure I caught fish. Uh, Secondly, probably. Uh, and I'll probably get killed on this one, but I'd like for to go with old DC Connell because, dadgummit, I want to learn how. I can see all the fish. I can get 1 out of 50 to bite. He catches them too good. So I'd like to. Maybe he'll hear this message and invite me to go to.
I tell you what,
Well, we
not
have
only because
1,200
of
people watching right now, so
no, not only
Oh,
because of how good he is on the water, but it'd probably just be a blast with him to hang out with him for the day because you know what that's what fishing's all about. Is the
oh,
love of
absolutely.
sport. And
yeah.
and when you're watching DC, what whether he's on the first day of competition or if he makes the final day, he
Yeah.
is having such a blast on the boat. It doesn't matter if he's bringing up the rear or if he's fighting for the
Wearing a
win.
tutu.
Yeah,
And
or wearing a tutu like that.
yeah, and
But yeah, he just
and I will go after I make this one comment. I didn't deal with DC. He didn't fish the FLW tour,
yeah,
Right.
but I run in across him on my trips to Lake Mitchell, and I admired him because he could catch fish more than anything. But I watched him, and he always had a big time like I do.
yeah,
Yeah.
And Then all of a sudden he's fishing Major League Fishing. I really watch him, and he can catch them. But now it's
Okay.
between him and Jacob Wheeler on that, but that's
I tell
okay.
I tell you what, Justin won the first one this year, and he's slowly creeping up on Jacob's
Yeah.
tournament wins. And then what does Jacob do? Heck no, dude. You're not going to creep up on me. I'm going to win the next one and put that gap back to two
Yeah.
wins. So now you have to catch two more to catch me, or win two more to catch me now. So
Mhm.
that's funny to see. You know how they're both in the same house, so you can imagine behind the scenes what the chit chat goes on before they
Oh
hit the water
yeah.
between them two.
Oh yeah. Well, thanks for having me, guys,
Yes,
and
sir,
hope
man.
to
It's
see you
been
at Red
fun, bro.
Crest. And
If
God
not,
bless you.
if you're going to be at ICAST, we'll definitely see you at ICAST.
Well, I know I'm going to Red Crest, and but now I may go to ICAST this time. Uh, Flights are pretty reasonable, and but I may try to get down there. May be my last opportunity.
Yeah.
All right.
All
Have a
right,
good
brother.
Mr.
evening.
Thanks,
Bill,
brother.
thank you so
Thank you
much.
so much,
Thank
man.
you all. God bless you fans out
God
there. We
bless you,
love you.
brother. Thank you, so.
Yeah.
Bye bye.